Family, let me remind you of something we often forget when life gets heavy. Difficulty is not the absence of God. It is often the classroom of God. We want deliverance, but God is more interested in development. We pray for comfort, but God is after character. Hard moments have a way of exposing what easy seasons hide. When everything is going well, faith can become casual. But when the pressure turns up, faith has to decide whether it's real or just religious talk. That's why God allows us to walk through valleys, because valleys teach lessons that mountaintops never can. See, God is not wasting your pain. What you call a setback, God calls a setup. What looks like a delay is often divine preparation. He will allow the heat not to burn you, but to refine you. Just like gold must pass through fire to become pure, faith must pass through hardship to become strong. Some of us want God to remove the storm, but God says, I want to reveal myself in the storm. Because when the storm lasts longer than expected, faith learns how to stand without explanation. And when you can trust God without answers, you've moved from shallow belief to solid faith. Hard moments teach us dependence. When resources run out, we discover that God is still sufficient. When strength is gone, His power shows up best. And when you reach the end of yourself, you finally discover the beginning of God. So don't despise the hard season. Don't quit in the pressure. Don't walk away when things don't make sense. God is shaping something in you that ease never could. Strong faith isn't formed in comfort. It's forged in crisis. And when you come out, and you will come out, you won't just have a testimony of survival. You'll have a faith that's unshakable, a trust that's mature, and a walk with God that's deeper than ever before. Hard moments often make us question whether God is still near, whether His hand is still guiding us, or whether we've somehow been forgotten. When life becomes difficult, the natural assumption is that God has stepped away or gone silent. But difficulty is not evidence of God's absence. It is often proof of His involvement. The very moments that feel like abandonment are frequently the moments when God is doing His deepest work. From the beginning, Scripture shows us that God does not distance Himself from His people during hardship. Instead, He steps closer, even when His presence is not immediately felt. Silence does not mean separation. Waiting does not mean rejection. God often works quietly beneath the surface, shaping outcomes we cannot yet see. Just as a teacher remains present during a difficult exam but does not give the answers, God stays near while allowing the challenge to develop our understanding and trust. Hardship reveals the difference between knowing about God and truly knowing Him. When circumstances are favorable, faith can remain theoretical, something spoken about but not leaned on. But when trouble comes, faith is forced to move from words to reliance. In those moments, God is training the heart to depend on Him rather than on favorable conditions. The struggle is not designed to push us away. It is designed to draw us deeper. God's training is rarely comfortable because growth never is. Muscles strengthen through resistance, not ease. Likewise, spiritual strength is built when faith is exercised under pressure. If God removed every difficult moment, faith would never mature. We might remain spiritually informed, but never spiritually transformed. The hardship becomes the environment where faith is practiced, refined, and strengthened. Many people interpret difficulty as punishment, but that misunderstanding can lead to discouragement and retreat. God's discipline is not about condemnation. It is about preparation. He allows challenges not to crush His people, but to equip them for what lies ahead. The weight being placed on you today is often connected to the responsibility God is preparing you to carry tomorrow. Without training, promotion becomes dangerous. Without testing, strength remains unproven. Hard moments also expose misplaced trust. When familiar supports are removed, finances, relationships, health, or certainty, we begin to see where our confidence has truly been anchored. God allows these supports to shake so that faith can settle. where it belongs. What feels like instability is often a divine invitation to transfer trust from temporary sources to an eternal foundation. There is also intimacy found in difficulty that cannot be replicated elsewhere. In pain, prayers become honest. Worship becomes deeper. Dependence becomes personal. God meets his people in valleys in ways he does not on mountaintops, not because he prefers suffering, but because suffering opens the heart. When distractions fade, awareness of God sharpens. What feels like isolation often becomes a place of encounter. Training seasons are rarely understood while they are happening. Looking back, however, patterns begin to emerge. The patience learned through waiting. The humility formed through struggle, and the resilience built through endurance all testify that God was present all along. The lesson becomes clear only after the season has done its work. Faith grows quietly, often unnoticed, until the moment it is needed most. Hard moment. Remind believers that faith is not sustained by circumstances, but by conviction. When everything else is uncertain, faith learns how to stand on what does not change. God uses hardship to move faith from emotional dependence to settled confidence. That kind of faith is not easily shaken because it has been trained under pressure. Rather than asking whether God has left during difficult times, a better question is what he is shaping. The struggle is not random. The pressure is not pointless. God is in. Or distant, he is deliberate. Training always precedes strength, and difficulty often signals that God is preparing. Faith for greater stability, greater influence, and greater trust. Comfort has a way of making faith passive. When life is smooth, resources are plentiful, and answers come quickly, belief can remain surface level present, but untested. In those seasons, it is easy to praise, easy to trust, and easy to say the right words, because nothing is demanding anything deeper. Comfort allows faith to exist without cost. But faith that has never been challenged has never been proven. And what remains? Unproven remains weak. When comfort is removed, faith is forced to respond. Pressure introduces questions that ease never asks. It pushes belief out of theory and into action. Suddenly, faith is no longer about what is said in public, but about what is trusted in private. In those moments, faith either deepens or dissolves. God allows comfort to fade, not to harm belief, but to give it the opportunity to grow roots strong enough to survive storms. Easy seasons tend to produce shallow confidence because the source of peace is often mistaken. Many people confuse faith in God with faith in good circumstances. As long as life cooperates, trust feels strong. But when circumstances change, what seemed like faith is revealed to be dependence on convenience. The removal of comfort exposes that confusion and invites faith to attach itself to something unchanging rather than something favorable. Struggle has a way of clarifying priorities. When comfort is gone, distractions lose their grip. What once seemed important suddenly feels optional. And what truly matters comes into focus. Faith becomes less about routine and more about relationship. Prayer becomes less formal and more urgent. Trust becomes less assumed and more intentional. God uses discomfort to strip away excess so faith can become focused and sincere. There is also a refining process that happens when comfort is taken away. In ease, faith can coexist with pride, control, and self-reliance. But hardship exposes how limited those qualities truly are. When solutions are no longer available and strength is no longer sufficient, faith learns humility. It begins to acknowledge its dependence on God rather than its confidence in self. That humility becomes the soil where strong faith grows. The absence of comfort teaches perseverance. Faith that has never had to endure, has never had to decide whether to remain. Endurance builds spiritual stamina. It teaches faith how to wait without giving up, how to trust without understanding, and how to remain steady when answers are delayed. That kind of faith does not develop overnight. It is cultivated through repeated moments of choosing trust in the middle of discomfort. Discomfort also reshapes expectation. Many people expect faith to remove difficulty rather than sustain them through it. When comfort disappears and God does not immediately change the situation, faith learns a deeper lesson. God's presence is more valuable than immediate relief. That realization shifts faith from outcome-based belief to relationship-based trust. Faith becomes anchored in who God is, not in what God does. Strong faith emerges when belief survives disappointment, when prayers are delayed, when outcomes differ from expectations, and when clarity does not come. Faith has to decide whether it will continue to trust God's character. That decision strengthens belief far more than instant answers ever could. Faith matures when it learns to rest in God's faithfulness rather than demand his explanation. The loss of comfort forces faith to become active rather than assumed. Trust must be chosen daily, sometimes moment by moment. That continual choice builds resilience. Over time, faith becomes less reactive and more stable. It no longer rises and falls with circumstances because it has learned how to stand without support. In the end, comfort may feel desirable, but it is discomfort that strengthens belief. God allows faith to be challenged so it can be established. What survives the absence of ease emerges, deeper, steadier, and more secure. Faith that has learned to trust without comfort is faith that can endure anything. Pressure has a way of being misunderstood. When life becomes intense, when challenges seem to multiply, and when relief feels distant, it is easy to assume that the pressure itself is meant to break us. But pressure in God's heart, NDS, is never random and never destructive. It is purposeful. It is applied not to ruin faith, but to refine it. What feels overwhelming is often the very process through which God is strengthening what he values most. Refinement requires heat. Without it, impurities remain hidden and untreated. In the same way, faith that has never been tested may appear strong on the surface, but pressure reveals what truly lies beneath. God allows pressure to expose weakness, not to shame us, but to heal and strengthen us. What is revealed under pressure is what God intends to transform, not discover. Many assume that if pressure is present, God must be displeased. Yet throughout Scripture, those closest to God often walk through the most intense seasons. Pressure is not a sign of rejection. It is often evidence of calling. The greater the purpose, the greater the refinement required. God knows that faith entrusted with influence must first be purified through testing. Under pressure, faith is forced to release false supports, confidence in personal ability, control over outcomes, and reliance on predictable routines begin to crack. As those supports fail, faith is redirected toward God himself. This redirection is uncomfortable because it requires surrender. But surrender is not loss, it is alignment. Pressure removes what cannot last, so that faith can rest on what will not fail. Pressure also teaches faith how to remain stable. When circumstances fluctuate, faith learns how to stand iron without emotional collapse. Endurance is developed not by avoiding stress, but by surviving it. Each moment of sustained pressure builds spiritual resilience. Faith becomes less fragile, less reactive, and more anchored. What once felt unbearable becomes survivable and eventually manageable. There is a difference between damage and refinement. Damage weakens structure, refinement strengthens it. God never applies pressure without boundaries. He knows the limit of what faith can endure and never allows the refining process to destroy what he has promised to preserve. Though the pressure may feel intense, it is always measured by divine wisdom and care. Refinement also reshapes perspective. Under pressure, faith learns to see beyond immediate discomfort. It begins to recognize that the process is temporary, but the result is lasting. This shift in perspective changes how hardship is interpreted. Pressure is no longer seen as an enemy, but as an instrument. Faith begins to cooperate with the process rather than resist it. Pressure brings clarity. When life is calm, it is easy to ignore inconsistencies and compromises. But under pressure, those things surface quickly. God uses pressure to remove what weakens faith, fear, doubt, and misplaced priorities. What remains after pressure has done its work is stronger, purer, and more focused belief. Refinement also produces confidence. Faith that has endured pressure carries a quiet assurance that cannot be taught or borrowed. It has been proven through experience. That confidence is not arrogance, but assurance rooted in God's faithfulness. Faith remembers surviving what once seemed impossible and trusts God for what lies ahead. There is also fruit produced through pressure that cannot grow in ease. Patience, endurance, humility, and compassion are cultivated in seasons of strain. These qualities deepen faith and expand its capacity. What begins as pressure ends as preparation. Pressure is not the end of the story. It is part of the process that transforms raw belief into resilient trust. God uses pressure to remove impurities, strengthen foundations, and shape faith that can endure weight without collapsing. What emerges from refinement is not broken belief, but faith that is stronger, steadier, and ready for what comes next. Dependence is rarely learned in moments of abundance. When resources are available and strength feels sufficient, it is natural to rely on what is visible and familiar. Self-sufficiency can feel responsible, even wise, but it quietly shifts trust away from God and onto human ability. God allows seasons where those abilities reach their limit, so that faith can be redirected to its proper source. When human strength fades, divine strength becomes undeniable. The failure of self-sufficiency is not meant to humiliate, but to realign. God never intended for his people to carry life's weight alone. Independence may look strong, but it is often fragile. It holds as long as conditions cooperate. When those conditions change, self-reliance collapses under pressure. God uses that collapse to teach faith where true strength comes from. When resources run out, faith is forced to confront its expectations. Many expect God to supplement human effort rather than replace it. But when effort is exhausted and options are gone, faith learns that God is not merely an assistant, he is the source. That realization changes the posture of belief. Faith shifts from control to trust, from management to surrender. Dependence deepens relationship. When people rely on themselves, prayer becomes optional and God becomes secondary. But when self-sufficiency fails, prayer becomes essential and God becomes central. Faith moves from casual acknowledgement to constant reliance. This shift brings intimacy because dependence creates connection. The more faith leans on God, the more it becomes aware of his presence and provision. There's clarity that comes when human strength ends, pride weakens, excuses fade, and illusions of control disappear. Faith becomes honest. Instead of pretending capability, belief admits need. That honesty is not weakness, it is strength. God responds to humility with grace. And faith grows when it acknowledges its limitations. God's strength operates differently from human strength. Human effort is finite, but divine power is inexhaustible. When faith learns to depend on God, it begins to experience provision that defies logic. Strength appears where weakness once dominated. Direction emerges where confusion prevailed. Peace settles where anxiety once ruled. These experiences teach faith that God is not constrained by the same limit that restrict human ability. Dependence also trains faith to wait. When solutions are no longer immediate and answers are delayed, faith learns patience. Waiting is not passive, it is active trust. It requires belief that God is working even when results are unseen. That kind of trust matures faith and strengthens endurance. Faith that can wait without despair is faith that has learned true dependence. Self-sufficiency often isolates, but dependence unites. When faith acknowledges need, it opens space for God to work and for others to support. God frequently provides strength through unexpected means, reminding faith that help is not failure. Learning to receive is part of learning to trust. Dependence reshapes priority. When human strength is no longer the foundation, faith becomes more attentive to God's guidance. Decisions are made with prayer rather than impulse. Direction is sought rather than assumed. Faith becomes responsive instead of reactive. The end of self-sufficiency is not loss, it is liberation. Faith is freed from the burden of pretending control and allowed to rest in God's capability. That rest is not complacency. It is confidence rooted in divine strength rather than human effort. When faith learns to depend on God, it becomes resilient. It no longer panics when resource has diminished or strength phase because it knows where its help comes from. God uses the limits of human ability to reveal the depth of his power. What begins as weakness becomes the doorway to greater faith, deeper trust, and lasting strength. Crisis has a way of stripping life down to what truly matters. When everything is convenient, faith can remain untested and largely theoretical. It exists alongside comfort, supported by predictability and routine. But when crisis arrives, convenience disappears, and faith is forced into the open. What remains after the shaking reveals whether belief is rooted deeply or resting loosely on circumstances. Convenience offers stability without resistance. It allows faith to function without being challenged. In those moments, trust can feel strong simply because nothing is demanding it. Crisis, however, removes that safety net. It demands decisions in uncertainty, trust without clarity, and perseverance without guarantees. God allows crisis not to destroy faith, but to solidify it. What is never tested is never confirmed. In crisis, faith learns how to stand alone. Familiar supports fail, predictable systems collapse, and human solutions reach their limits. In that space, faith must choose where it will rest. Either it collapses under the weight of fear, or it anchors itself in God's unchanging nature. This anchoring is not automatic. It is a conscious decision repeated day after day. Each decision to trust strengthens faith's foundation. Crisis also exposes the depth of belief. Words spoken in calm seasons are easy. Trust practiced in crisis is costly. When prayers seem unanswered and outcomes remain uncertain, faith is refined from declaration to dependence. It moves from rehearsed language to lived conviction. That transition is uncomfortable, but it is necessary for faith to mature. God uses crisis to deepen conviction. When external circumstances offer no reassurance, faith must rely on internal certainty. This certainty is not based on emotion, but on character, God's faithfulness, consistency, and sovereignty. As faith leans into these truths, it becomes less fragile. It no longer rises and falls with circumstances because it has been anchored to something eternal. Crisis also trains faith to endure. Endurance is not built through brief challenges, but through sustained pressure. Faith learns how to remain steady when resolution is delayed. It learns patience, resilience, and hope that does not depend on immediate relief. Over time, this endurance becomes strength. What once threatened to overwhelm faith becomes the very thing that strengthens it. There is a maturity that emerges from crisis that convenience cannot produce. Faith that has survived hardship carries wisdom.
This world is endless, so wide, so far, but somehow I'm still lost in you. The streets are full of moving shadows, countless places I could go. City shining, people passing, yet I still feel so alone. Every road keeps leading nowhere. Every sky feels cold and blue. In this world so vast and open, I'm still lost in missing you. The world is wide, so wide before me, but I keep losing my way. Somewhere in the endless distance, your memory makes me stay. The world moves on without us, but my heart remains untrue. For no matter where these feet may wander, I'm still lost in missing you. I have tried to outrun silence, tried to leave your ghost behind, but your name still echoes softly through the corners of my mind. The world is wide, so wide before me, but I keep losing my way. Somewhere in the endless distance, your memory makes me stay. The world moves on without us, but my heart remains untrue. For no matter where these feet may wander, I'm still lost in missing you. Maybe someday I'll stop searching for your face in every crowd, but until that day, this broken heart will keep calling your name out. The world is wide, so wide before me, but I keep losing my way. Somewhere in the endless distance, your memory makes me stay. The world moves on without us, but my heart remains untrue. For no matter where these feet may wander, I'm still lost in missing